We haven't started yet, are we?
We'll just run it. We can cut it.
Well, are we on or not?
Yeah,
we can cut it out.
Okay, right. We've got to do some background. Okay. I think the most important thing about the architecture of where we are, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the table. Don't start again. Here we go. I think the most important thing about the architecture of King Edward's is how the architect in the late 1930s. Do you want to shut up? Very funny. Yesterday at HMC, I was filmed by these people with because they do this sort of TV channel about the Headmasters' Conference. And I was sitting with this bloke who's an expert. He's the man who's doctor responsible for all the Olympic athletes. And I was filmed, and then I saw myself on television. It was horrible. First of all, I realised how old you are when you see it on television. And secondly, I was staring like a loon. Whilst the chap was speaking, I was just staring like a loon at the... No, right, okay, let's get it done. Take 37, okay. I think the most interesting thing about the architecture of the school here is the challenge that the architect, who was Noel Edwardian, had in designing a building in the 1930s. You've got to try and think of two things, I think. The first of them is that he's trying to replace a great building in New Street, we're in the middle of town, designed by Burne-Jones, God bloody hell, God cut, right, got to pieces together, okay. He's trying to replace a building designed by Sir Charles Barry and by Augustus Pugin, who then went on to design the House of Commons. So he's trying to build a monumental building to replace it. And secondly, in a sense, one of the things that clear to mind is in his mind is he's trying to produce a building which reminds you of 1552 and reminds you this is a school that's existed since Edward VI. So, if you look at it, it's a great big monumental pile. One of the great tragedies to my mind is that it was built with a great big south front so that the people travelling down the busiest road in Birmingham, the Bristol Road, could see King Edward's. And in the last 30 odd years, that enormous hedge has stopped people looking, so that's a real disappointment. Secondly, what he's done with the brickwork is by putting the patterned bricks in, and by having the bricks and then the stone like around the outside of a big school, like the Oriel Staircase, he's imitating buildings from the 16th century. So in a way, what he's trying to do is, with a place like Big School, he's echoing what New Street was like, and with the outside, he's echoing what a school might have looked like in 1552. And to my mind, he's done a brilliant job of, in a sense, conveying that historical nature of this school. This is a great school, it goes back to Edward VI, and these buildings are trying to tell you so.
So I was just wondering, how do you think the art and design centre fits into this? Because it's viewed as this guy is unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the big problems for schools, which has happened perhaps less here than elsewhere, is that schools have tended to expand, or they've needed new facilities, new laboratories, new design and technology, for example. And at that moment, what does an architect do? Does he sort of copy what there is, or does he try to do something additional? And in a way, the same problem might lie ahead with the Performing Arts Centre, which you might want to talk about. In a way, I think the real failure going up the drive towards the design centre isn't the design centre, which actually has some character and is interesting, whether you like it or not, it actually has some design. I think the real failure is the rubbish bolted onto the far, is the biology department, which is a really ordinary, drab building. And so I have mixed feelings. Well, it's clearly the case that the design centre is very odd with all those stairs and staircases and things like that. People may not like what it looks like, but it does have, in a sense, a character and a design. I think the mistake we've made is actually in ribbon developing so the design centre is so far away, whereas actually, if you look at it, you could have built on, for example, on top of the science labs. And also there's some other really bad buildings. The science lab on the left-hand side when you're walking down the science corridor, which we've obviously done later when we needed more science, they're rubbish. I mean, they're really, if you actually look at those buildings. So, in a way, I don't think the buildings that have been added on to the original design have actually enhanced it at all.
And the old music school didn't really fit in.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's the same problem. But if you go to any school, it's the problem. People build, it's the 1960s. What's modern and smart in 1960? And also there's a limitation of money you haven't always got. Schools don't always have vast sums of money to build the best possible building. It's the art of the possible. And the old music schools, it was still made out of bricks, it wasn't horrible, but it had that jagged bit, which is a bit like, which was popular at the time. But it looks, by the end, it hasn't lasted the distance. And I suppose one of the problems is trying to build buildings on this site, if you're going to do something new, which actually somebody in 30 or 40 or 50 years' time isn't going to say, Why the hell did they do that? I mean, they're covering the swimming pool, I think, is a monstrosity. Because actually it's wrecked that colonnade bit, which is really lovely. Dance's Diner and the changing rooms, the field changing rooms, are very limited in their ambitions. I think the field changing rooms are dreadful places and don't even look out onto the pitches. So in a way, I don't think in the last 30 or 40 years that we've done anything to match. I believe the original building, when you sit in Big School, when you walk down the drive, when you see the corridors and the science labs, I think the man who built the thing in the 1930s built a really brilliant building. I don't know, I go around saying, I don't know any other day school in this country that's got a better central building than the one we have from the 1930s. I think since then we ain't done a great job.
When you looked at designs for the new Performing Arts Centre, did you have any vision in mind? Did you want it to fit in with the school?
Well, I mean, what you do is you have a beauty contest and you find what you believe are some architects who are going to be good for the job, who've done performing arts centres for other places. So we had 9 architects, and we went down to 4 and had a beauty contest. In the end, we chose the people we chose, I think, for 2 reasons. One is that the other 3 architects would have built a building which would have run down from where the music school's down towards the parade ground. Whereas Howard Tompkins, the architects we decided, they said, no, you've got it wrong. What the music school did was wreck the pattern, where basically you've got this long spine of Big School, of the south front, and then you've got Big School jutting out, and you've got the gyms jutting out, and the music schools mucked that up. So they were the only ones who actually realised that putting a building parallel to Big School would restore Big School to being visible from both sides and restore Chantry Court, which has become a dreadful hole ever since the music schools. So that was one of the key factors of the way they saw the site. The second reason was I think we thought that they were sensitive to the architectural history, and we hope that we won't be cursed in 30 or 40, 50 years' time, because we think we've built a building which is coherent in relation to it. It's got bricks in it, it's going to use patterned brickwork, just like the patterned brickwork here. It's got modern features, and it's going to be very big in relation to Big School. But we hope that in the end those architects have produced a building which actually is modern, but is also sensitive to and integrated with what the original buildings are like. Only time will tell.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.